Alright, so today we're going to go ahead and sketch a scene from Bass Lake. So the first thing to do is to find an interesting composition of rocks and trees. And I like this particular one because I can picture myself sketching it. This would be fun actually to do with watercolor or charcoal or just pencil, but for this one I'm going to use pencil first as an outline, and then later on I'm going to do it with pen. Alright, so I'm going to be using my pencil to measure the size of the objects in relation to each other and the angles of the lines that I see. And this is a good tool that you can, you'll always have it with you. You got your pencil, just take it out of your pencil bag, and you want to hold that up and use that at arm's length. So you want to extend your arm all the way when you're using this as a measuring tool. And so in my mind, then what's happening here is I'm imagining these vertical, or diagonal rather, lines, which seem to kind of set apart these rocks from the surrounding background. So you can see I've got the one on the top there is separating the sky and the trees above, and the one below kind of the kind of sand or the lower section, but the details are really right within that strip between those two diagonal lines. And then mentally I'm also studying the composition, and I'm dividing each of the sections up. I'm looking for very definable sections, and I'm going to attack each one of those sections at a time, and then compare, contrast, and then connect. So sometimes the hardest part is figuring out where to begin, so I've decided I'm going to start up on the top left there, and I'm going to be sketching the very first chunk. I'm going to call it a chunk. Okay, so here would be the first chunk, and as you can see, it's not exactly precise. It's my flawed interpretation of that first rock, but it's okay, I can always go back later. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start working on the second chunk, that section just below that first one. And again, I'm comparing the size of the rocks as close as I can, and here's where using that pencil viewfinder really comes in handy. So you want to take that viewfinder and you're going to be comparing with your pencil the size of that smaller rock in comparison to the one above it. So again, it's not perfect, but because I'm starting in pencil, I can always make repairs later if necessary. Okay, so then the next thing I'm going to do is attach the third section of the rocks, and it helps if you can come up with some kind of a way to, you're looking at the shapes and you're imagining what they are. Like for example, this one just looks like Moby Dick to me. It looks like this whale. So I'm kind of picturing that. It's going to actually help me to sketch it, because sometimes when you're looking at objects, they're very obscure, so you don't know how in the world you're supposed to draw that. But if you can picture it as some kind of a shape that you already know, and then sketch that, it might help. And so now you can see there's a little sketch there. You can see the whale down at the bottom. He's even got that little tail there, and it's like a puzzle. So now I've got the main pieces of the puzzle put together, and so what I'm going to do now is just kind of roughly sketch in the background. I have those trees, a little bit of the foreground, just kind of give me some, where does the scene lie in relation to other things around it. And now the fun part is I can actually start taking the pen. In this case, I'm using like a sepia color. It's hard to tell here, but it's like a brownish colored fine-tipped felt pen, and I'm going to go ahead and start sketching it. And I'm going right over the top of the pencil. Okay, I don't need to erase it. This is the way I'm going to do it. You can also see I'm using a lot of these vertical lines, but I'm not necessarily going in the same direction. So it's okay to turn the paper if you need to, but I'm just pulling, just dragging the pen across the paper. I'm not pushing hard here. So yeah, so I'm using these little lines to suggest texture and values. I'm using some hatching, so just that one direction, and I'm just letting the tip of the pen just kind of drag there, or just kind of go in that same motion. I'm doing it quickly. I'm not taking a lot of time with this. And then I'm going to continue here outlining some of these rocks, and I'm just holding the pen loosely, and I'm filling in some of those darker areas by doing some cross hatching. So I'm going to go one direction with the pen, and then I'm going to switch the direction and cross hatch the other way, so it makes the values darker and suggesting some deep shadows in there. Okay, so just continuing, going through and not, so if, for instance, I'm pressing hard on the pen, it's going to give me a completely different look. If I'm using the pen lightly and kind of using very light, just dragging motions with the pen, I'll want to do that for the whole thing. I don't want to have a drawing where it's inconsistent. So however I'm using that pen, I want to use the pen on the entire drawing in the same way, if that makes sense, so that it provides kind of a consistent look to the overall picture. So by the time I finish up, and I'll say this is finished actually, I'm not going to take this any farther. I'm going to stop at this point. I'm just putting in suggestions of background trees. I'm not going to make it super detailed because it's almost like it's a background, so it's just something out of focus. It's just kind of a suggestion of the forest behind, whereas most of the details are in that foreground, or not necessarily foreground, but in the main focal points of the drawing. And I want the viewer to be able to really focus on those rocks, not anything else. The other parts that are there are mostly for position and placement of where these rocks were. It kind of gives an idea of how it's situated in its surroundings. All right, so that's basically it. And this would be, like I said, it'd be kind of a fun drawing to do with watercolor. I could still add watercolor to this if I wanted. I happen to like it just like it is. It would be kind of fun to do it again with just pencil and really focus on some of the details. But this is actually one of my favorite types of drawings. So we're going to leave it at that. All right? Thanks for watching.